Film Club.
Hello.
Every week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us, and this week, we're taking a look at Rain Over Me.
Rain Over Me is a story about a guy called Charlie, whose old friend Alan sees him on the street. He sees Charlie not well kept, not how he was before. You know, they used to go to dentist school together. And it turns out that Charlie's lost his family. He's had a tragic accident and he's suffering from PTSD. And it's about Alan's story. He's not really content with his own life, trying to better himself by bettering his friend. And essentially, the whole story is a tale of grief. Directed by Mike Binder, who I don't know if we've done him before.
We haven't.
And I recommended this because I watched this years ago. And we did last week. We did Adam Sandler and the Marriott stories. And I said, I don't know if this is one of his best performances. I remember Rain on Me, where he really dealt with grief well. Watching this again now, it didn't really... I said to you before, it's not a perfect film at all. However, I did remember Sandler's performance. And what I was a bit taken aback this time was Don Cheadle's performance as Alan, because he was brilliant. They both were, in fact. And it's really interesting to revisit this, because we all start with the fact that Mike Binder's used a plot device in this that could be seen as a bit sensitive, which is the 9/11 attacks. Not the best thing to do, really, especially, like I said, the sensitivity of the situation. However, it is quite subtle, that his use for it. But then he does that and unfortunately produces quite a lot of other film cliches, something you might see from a more novice director. Some of the storylines, like the pacing towards the end, just goes out the window, and some of the scene inclusions just seem to be like, why is that there? Because the best bits about this film is the relationship between Charlie and Alan. It's about the moments that they're together, whether they're playing a game, whether they're in a diner eating Chinese or whatever. They really have a really good chemistry together, and how that affects their outer lives. Like the wonderful scene towards the end where they're in the dentist office, and Cheadle's character, Alan's having a go at them, and he's getting egged on by Charlie. Brilliant chemistry, brilliant. The only thing is it's a 2-hour film, more than 2-hour film. As I said, pacing's out, and it just kind of gets lost in those outer moments that don't need to be there. How did you find this?
Yeah, I mean, when you said we were going to do Rain Over Me originally, it was obviously focused primarily on Adam Sandler's performance. I think that Adam Sandler, for a lot of people, is just that guy who often phones in very comedic performances. He's known for his comedies. He's known for shouting a lot. He's known as a guy that is pretty one note. And I think that between Punch Drunk Love, the Meyerowitz stories, and Rain Over Me, just in the scope of Film Club, we've covered some really good performances from Adam Sandler. Obviously, if anyone else is looking for more of him, I'd definitely recommend you go and check out Uncut Gems as well. And I think that Rain Over Me totally stands among those as a really wonderful one from him. It's weird seeing a film that clearly the performances are outshining the script. Like, the filmmaking
So much.
and the script are the thing holding back the performances. Like, Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle are giving this film more in terms of their performances than I think the film actually deserves.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree with you. And it's wonderful to see them come together and just kind of roll with it and push on forward.
There's some really bizarre use of character throughout this film, I thought, where he frequently has characters sort of show up out of nowhere with very little background information to have maybe 2 or 3 scenes throughout the film. I'm thinking about like Adam Sandler's previous best friend before he started to withdraw. I'm thinking about the parents who first show up walking down the street at just happens to be the right moment.
Even like Donald Sutherland, who's like the judge, and he has all this scene about the judge in the court, and he's using, a powerhouse like Sutherland, and it's just like, so what has this scene accomplished really? That could be done in a small conversation.
Similarly, BJ Novak as well. They make him into a character, like this weird manipulative character, but they don't do anything with him. And the script does that consistently. It's very strange how he brings in these small characters, these small roles, does something very very identifiable with them. Like, they're not background characters. They're given this very prominent moment, but then really they're not that important in terms of the overarching structure of the film, or at least the thematic purpose of the film. Like, the way in which the film's actually meant to be talking about depression and grief and post-traumatic stress and dealing with loss, and a lot of these characters don't really get themselves involved in that plot at all.
No, it's interesting because you have Donna, who's like the kind of patient who's like trying to hit on Don Cheadle's character Alan. She's there, and there's this weird storyline with her trying to like explain herself, and she's got her own thing. There's this happenstance that they have the same therapist, and then at the end she becomes a potential love interest for Charlie. Doesn't really work. You have again
it's horrible.
Liv Tyler. Yeah,
Oh,
you have Liv Tyler as a therapist.
Can we just say for a second, the Donna stuff is horrible. Like, she comes
Poorly
in
written character.
with this really, really awkward flirting. It's performed in a strange way. It doesn't quite feel like everybody is on board with the material. The dialogue and even the concept itself is super creepy.
Yeah, concept just.
And then
not a fan.
The fact that the culmination of that character is to pay her off as some weird love interest to the guy's friend who she's been hitting on, like Don Cheadle for the whole film in this really overt way, really horrible way. And then the payoff for her character is meant to be a ployed love interest for Adam Sandler, even though the two have barely interacted.
It's almost misogynistic writing, really.
It's horrible.
I completely agree with you with that. But then you have like Liv Tyler's therapist, and whilst she's not necessarily bad, you have the kind of maturity of the character, and her sole purpose is to help others around her. It's not actually her who Charlie opens up to. It's Don Cheadle. So then you start to think she was kind of the catalyst. She has that conversations, goes, you need to tell someone. Then she helps in the court scenes later on, but the film could get away without her character.
I do appreciate though with her character in the court scene later when BJ Novak brings in her age as a reason to discredit her. I love the fact that Adam Sandler stands up at that point and he's like, no, hang on. I was doing that as a way of sort of pushing her because she was pushing me and we were pushing back, and it was this sort of like, I didn't really mean it. And I love the fact that in the court scene, he does stand up and he sort of goes, hang on, you can't discredit her for her age. Like, this is a really public forum. This is something that really matters. Like, you can't bring that in here.
I feel like one of the most underused characters is Alan's wife, who's played by Jada Pinkett Smith. He has this relationship, this struggling relationship, this family life. He wants to be a bit more independent, which is why he idolizes Charlie. She's there, she's supportive, but he implies that she holds him back, and they have this wonderful conversation at the end, how he doesn't open up to her. That lovely little bit at the end was tiny little bit of a tiny little relationship of such a major part of Alan's character, which is his family, and how he's been like throttled by his family, that we never got to see. And I feel like all those other kind of intricate scenes that we got of random characters, more could be utilized with people like, Jada Pinkett Smith's character, and like Alan's life. He's living vicariously through Charlie, really, and it's just a bit frustrating that we never saw about that, because I really enjoyed how Alan's trying to help others, and in himself he kind of wants to help himself. He wants to have a better situation. He realizes at the end, my situation is really good. I'm very sorry. I realized just how bad it could be, sort of thing. I was a bit pissed off about that, I'm not gonna lie.
I know that there is something included in this film that means a great deal to you on a personal level. So how did you feel about them constantly throughout the entire film referring to it as Shadows of the Colossus?
Yeah, it was a bit frustrating, but I'm glad they included it. I think one of the other things that Mike Binder suffers from with the directing is the overuse of themes. So like the overuse of Love Reign Over Me by The Who, and then it's at the end, fantastic rendition by Pearl Jam, is maybe overuse of commenting on Shadow of the Colossus. And it's great in principle. The thematic, like, people that don't know the game Shadow of the Colossus, it's a brilliant game, and it's based on grief. The main character's come back. He's unfortunately lost his loved one, and he's fighting to bring it back. So it's very kind of ties in with Charlie's character, which is quite interesting how that kind of relate to the film. But I do feel like there's an awkward scene at the end where, what's her name, Donna, is in the back, and he's like, oh yeah, Shadow of the Colossus, like this. And it's like, you don't have to point it out every time. Like, see them playing a game, have that nice bit of subtle background continuity, but don't keep going, oh, look, here's my little bit of symbolism. Wow, nice one, I get it.
It felt a lot like product placement. The constant repetition of the name, even though they were getting it wrong, the constant showing the game and like sort of engrossing in it. Also, borderline offensive way of representing video games in something where like they're addictive. Like, oh, if you sit down and you play Shadow of the Colossus, you're going to be addicted to it. And he's like, I'm not, I haven't got an addictive personality. I'm fine. But he gets addicted to it. The fact that just the act of playing the video game alone in his apartment was enough concern for Don Cheadle to get involved in the first place. Very, very weird.
It just feels like it, as you said, I think you hit the nail at the start. Some fantastic acting of some flawed characters, not through their own means, poorly glued together by some not so good directing and writing.
Yeah.
I hope that Mike Binder can. I'm not seeing his later work, and I hope that he learned a lot from this. From using rough cliches to using a very sensitive kind of crutch to, or pitch a sensitive kind of background to have character development from. But we got to see some amazing acting from Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle, and I am happy we watched this, but it didn't hit the same way as when I previously watched it. Put that way.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see him refine his use of music as well, because I think that
oh Christ, yeah.
Although the music, I really appreciate some of the tracks that he's chosen and the integration, given that it's something that Adam Sandler's character is using as a crutch, and it's a way of putting us in his headspace a little bit. The actual over reliance on some of that stuff borderlines on melodramatic in terms of where it takes the scenes. So
I do feel, and I was thinking this throughout, and I don't know if it's a bit harsh. I do feel that if you yourself saw the script on a piece of paper, it would be something you'd expect, maybe worse than what you'd expect from like just a normal essay that you receive every day, which is probably a bit harsh on your students. But what I'm trying to say is, this is the kind of work I would imagine from a very novice filmmaker, not someone who's done a few films in the past. This is, I've got these great ideas, I'm going to put them together, and not actually kind of have that fluidity and that experience to know when to cut stuff out and know when to get maybe like someone in to help you out with it. It felt very amateur.
I can't believe you just called it a student script. That's absolutely brutal.
Well, it is a bit though, isn't it? Like if you think about it,
it doesn't hang together properly for me. I think it's a really lacking script. But like you said, ultimately, I think the performances are significantly far beyond the constraints of that script and of the directing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, there is Reign Over Me. You can let us know in the comments below what you thought of the film.
Cheers, guys. He forgot to say it, so until then, get watching.